people were still saying, I'm really, really struggling with looking at my phone too much and I really need ways of cutting down.
This was an absolutely wild time where we had no idea what we were doing to our brains. This is a bit of a year of change in the health and wellness world. The skinny trend came back in 2025.
It's so dangerous. It's so damaging. It makes people focus on body size.
Lots of health tech products getting out there now. Have you tried anything of interest this year?
Even having an app on my phone called Opal that shuts down my social media at certain times.
But actually, the research shows that women now make up over 55 to 60% of biohacking clinic clients. What are your thoughts on this?
It's making sure that we're putting this really clear division between what actually works and where you might be being scammed.
Actually, the wellness industry is worth more than ever, but people are also more stressed and unhappy than ever. Hello, welcome back to the Health Review. Thank you for being here with us today. And this is the very last episode of 2025. So if you've been here with us this year, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for supporting, for watching, for your messages. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button because every subscription, especially at the beginning, goes a really long way. Thank you in advance. So today is another episode like last week where we are reflecting on 2025 across health and wellness. There's been lots of shifting in the industry, lots of change, exciting developments. So I wanted to just go through more of those stories to share with you today. I've got someone who's been on the show before in the studio who's joining me, Vanessa Sturman, who is a health coach and speaker. She's doing lots of interesting media appearances. Excited to hear about her year in health and wellness as well. Welcome back to the show, Vanessa.
Thank you so much for having me. An exciting topic to be going over.
Yeah, I'm super excited because it does feel like this is a bit of a year of change in the health and wellness world. Obviously, you know, there's been lots of debates around diets and health and food, and we can get into some of those topics. I know that you do excellent work with clients where you're helping them build healthy habits, nutrition. So I'd love to get your opinion on some of those things. But I'd love to get firstly your view on the sort of overall mood of 2025. What did it look like for you in terms of your own health and wellness habits? What did it look like for your clients?
So in terms of myself, I'm always reflecting on my own healthy habits because, of course, there's a lot I know about nutrition and nutrition habits and I walk my talk, but there's areas that I really need improvement in as well. And that I think, what can I do that, by the way, is evidence-based? Because we're always being told, we're always being hit with things where you might think, I don't know if that person's just made that up. They sound really, really convincing. And when it comes to an area you're not an expert in, it can be really hard to be caught out. So you really want to be looking at those evidence-based things. And that's exactly what I've been doing for myself. But I think the areas that I've really, really had to work on have been stress management, have been screen time. Oh, my goodness. And then that makes you, by the way, more stressed and anxious if you're already stressed and anxious. But we tend to go for the not so healthy habits when we are struggling, when we kind of need them most. And everyone struggles with that if they work in wellness, health, performance. Everyone's human. I'm human as well. And I definitely struggled with things like screen time. But one of my favorite habits I've implemented is buying a brain puzzle book. I didn't even want to do puzzles on my phone because I knew that would result in more screen time. And I've absolutely loved it. I absolutely love Sudoku now. I used to not make fun of my dad for doing it, but I thought, he just sits and does Sudoku all day. I could do that now as well. And I completely understand why and how satisfying it is. So really, really sorry, Dad, that I ever said that. I'm there with the crosswords and nighttime to stop me scrolling at night. Actually, I pick up the book and I do that. And it was really surprising to me, or maybe shouldn't be so surprising, just hearing how many successful people, everyone's successful in their own way, how many people were really struggling with things like screen time. People who were supposedly extremely busy, had kids, couldn't fit everything in. People were still saying, I'm really, really struggling with looking at my phone too much and I really need ways of cutting down. So this is something that I think needs to be talked about a lot more because I think people don't want to admit maybe they're glued to their phone more than they want to ever say.
I love that though, because although obviously nutrition, diet, everything like that is super important, they are the fundamentals. You know, if you get your diet right, a lot of other things sort of fall into place. But I love that people are now talking about these other areas of health and wellness. And it does make me wonder whether in years to come, we will look back at the whole screens thing and think that this was an absolutely wild time where we had no idea what we were doing to our brains. And we know that a lot more people are struggling with focus, with mental health, with isolation, loneliness. And we can obviously get into that more because it does feel that different area of health has arrived now. These trends are looking at more like, winding down away from your phones, going off grid, going out in nature, all of those things. It's definitely stuff I've been doing as well. So this year for me, I've been really focusing on weekends switching off, and being like a non-negotiable thing for me has been at least one day of the week being out in nature for like several hours, even if it's raining, getting out, like driving to a nearest forest, looking for countryside walks and just making it such a real habit into my routine. I'm lucky to live in London near a park, and just daily going out for walks, even on those horrible overcast days, you can still find like joy outside, which is really something I've always been a bit fussy about, going out in the bad weather. And I guess if you live in the UK, you've just got to get on with it sometimes. So I love that you've been focusing on those things. I'd love to get your opinion on some of the nutrition trends that have happened. So we know that this is kind of more your area of expertise. We've had things like fiber maxing, which we did mention on the show last week. Fiber maxing, that was a big trend this year, led maybe by Gen Z, people who wanted to just have a go at adding in more fiber. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it was a good trend, but my thoughts on trends overall is this constant obsession over one thing. The protein trend, that's still there, still an obsession. Protein's really important. Fiber's really important. We know that only 1 in 10 people is even getting enough fiber. It's actually a little bit less than that. So it was great to have a trend that said, oh, hey, add more fiber in. But my worry is because it's trendy and it's got a name to it, fiber maxing instead. And I know it's not as sexy and it's a bit more boring. Stepping back and saying, what are the things I should be filling my plate with all year round and regardless of trends? What does the evidence actually say? We need to be filling our plates with more fruit and veg. Beans actually got some spotlight this year, which I was so happy with. The Bang in the Beans campaign, which links to fiber max.
What is that?
So Veg Power and the Food Foundation, I think I've got that right, had a campaign with celebrity chefs to encourage people to buy and eat more beans, and actually working with supermarkets to encourage that. Now, beans are super cheap, and this is another thing that's really important when it comes to trends. So many trends are expensive. You see those, I sort of watch them more for entertainment and to go, goodness, that's ridiculous. Someone, my £500 a day skincare routine or whatever it is. There's so much of that kind of thing around. And something like beans, they're very sustainable. They're good for our planet. They are very cheap. They're very accessible. You can get them in a tin and keep them in your house and they're not going to go off. It was a great name of the campaign. We need to bang in more beans because we know they can help reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes. They are part of a really fantastic balanced diet. So that was an amazing trend. So part of the fiber maxing, I hope that having fiber in the spotlight, having beans in the spotlight never goes away. But I don't think we should be naming them things like fiber maxing because they're just going to end up going out of fashion. And that's a danger because we need people to continuously focus on fiber alongside the other things that need to be on the plate.
Yeah, I agree. And another interesting one, the carnivore diet, that has been back on social media again. It sort of does the rounds, doesn't it? So I hadn't heard much about it maybe earlier in the year, and it feels maybe in the second half of the year, conversations ignited again around the carnivore diet. And I see a lot of people saying they try it. And I think for people who potentially have had lots of IBS and gut issues and have a lot of sensitivity to fiber, they've kind of reached breaking point. So I understand why they try these trends, because I do think, as someone who's also struggled with a lot of gut issues in the last few years, it is tempting to go and do something extreme and to say, right, I'm cutting out all fiber because fiber seems to upset my gut. But there are some dangers involved as well. And it is kind of that black and white thinking. What are your thoughts on the carnivore diet and the sort of conversation that's been going on around it this year?
So, like you said, I do understand why people, if they are completely misinformed and they're desperate, end up going down what can be a really dangerous route. It's really important if someone is struggling with a particular condition that they see a professional, that they are seeing, first of all, maybe going to their doctor, seeing a registered dietitian, not going and following someone on social media who says, well, go and cut out all of these sorts of things. So please go first to your GP before doing something like that. And I wouldn't advise anyone to go and do something like that for a start. People do see some results because it's an extreme elimination diet as well. So people will often say, I lost weight. Yes, you're drastically cutting your calories, so you probably are going to lose weight. But there's so many dangers of the carnivore diet. It's really not studied. There's very little evidence behind it. We know that we need fiber. You are cutting out lots of foods that we know are excellent for your health, your gut, your long-term health. And we know that these diets, the carnivore diet, is very high in saturated fat, dietary cholesterol, and often eating foods that we know are classified maybe as a type 2 carcinogen like red meat. So we need to be so careful, and it is not the answer to head down the carnivore route. And what we have seen is that a lot of the biggest carnivore influencers have started building more plants back into their diets because they've realized it's completely unsustainable. But I think my takeaway from this is if you are struggling with a condition and you're struggling with your diet, please go first to your doctor or a registered dietitian.
It's tempting to just experiment, isn't it? And I think having guidance through, also a lot of people using AI, that's something that's been going on this year. So I think a lot of people using ChatGPT in particular to come up with diet plans, which obviously is helpful. But I think alongside an expert is ideally the right sort of combo. And using AI for nutrition stuff can be good for recipes. It can be helpful to sort of help with the education process. But I think combining it with an actual expert in your life is probably the best way forward. Also, would love to get your view on the kind of skinny talk thing that's been going on. We've always had GLP-1s used more widely, both via medical professionals, both via the black market. The skinny trend came back in 2025, didn't it?
It did, and it's really upsetting to see, especially if you lived through the 90s and 2000s, which I did, where skinny was a massive trend. If you think back to those programs we used to watch, and we used to look at women be called fat and overweight who were also actually very slim themselves, and you think, well, that's why everyone got messed up about that. And it was wonderful to see things move forward, people be more accepting, body positivity, even things like the campaigns, health at any size, getting people to implement healthy habits no matter what their size to help them benefit from that instead of focusing on weight. And of course, it's fine if you want to lose weight. That's something that's obviously a goal for some people, and that's really great. But we started to focus a bit more on healthy habits, getting fit, no matter what your size, go out for a walk. And this was really important. And this bringing back of the skinny it's so dangerous. It's so damaging. It makes people focus on body size and often trying to fit a particular shape and size that your body may never fit. And it's absolutely awful. It's terrible for mental health. It's very upsetting overall, and that's a trend that definitely needs to die. And if someone feels that if they are struggling with their mental health around food, it is really important that you go and get help, because we do not want to normalize things like orthorexia or any kind of eating disorder, which people might be walking around with not knowing that they actually have.
It feels like a big step backwards, and also a bit contradictory to the way that actually it looks like nutrition and health is being understood as more of an individualized thing. So I think a lot of people are understanding that, nutrition in particular, certain foods work better for some people, supplements, that's a very individualized thing. So I feel like that's one way in which people are understanding that we are all unique and very different. But it's like the body shape thing just still doesn't seem to be accepted, that we are all very different and we shouldn't sort of hold ourselves to one specific look or standard. So that is a bit of a disappointing kind of step back, I guess, for 2025. Hopefully things will level out again in 2026. We'll see. At least we've got social media now to at least try and spread awareness and spread the message with experts like yourself. I'm curious to know, were there any wellnessy products you used this year that you found interesting? I'll start because I've been doing a red light mask on my skin, which has been quite good. So I've been using that probably about 4 or 5 times a week. And they say with the red light masks, the best way to kind of see differences through consistent use. So lots of regular use with that. So that's been something I've been trying. But also I have got a vagus nerve stimulator in the last few weeks. It's called the Pulsetto. And actually this had a lot of publicity, this device. and curious to try it, and actually have found it really interesting to use. So you kind of put it around your neck, and it sits sort of on either side where the vagus nerve is, and it sends these sort of little pulses. Was a little bit skeptical at first, thinking, oh, I'm not really sure it's going to work. Read some really incredible reviews where people are saying it's like, if you use it again consistently, sleep much better, but alongside other practices like meditation, like relaxing and winding down in the evening. It seems like it could be a promising tool for people, and I think it's quite exciting. Lots of sort of health tech products getting out there now. Have you tried anything of interest this year?
Not any health tech products like that. And one thing I would really encourage people to do, if you are going to try a product, make sure you're not just looking at reviews from people, that you are making sure that there is an evidence base to it, or that you are comfortable, if it doesn't have much evidence, making sure that it's safe for you to use and that you're happy to still use it. In terms of the tech, what have I been using? So I think I've probably more been using apps. So things like the Calm app. I actually got a lifetime subscription to it several years ago, actually many years ago, on a Black Friday. So I think I forgot to keep using it because I had this lifetime subscription. But I found the nighttime meditations very helpful. I found some of the binaural beats very helpful as well, with the headphones in to help me get to sleep. That sort of thing, I think, is never going to die in terms of that being helpful. And then even having an app on my phone called Opal that shuts down my social media at certain times so that I have to be more intentional if I want to open my social media after 8 o'clock. Doesn't always stop me opening it after 8 o'clock, but I have to be more intentional about that. I think I've used as many devices. I've seen other people kind of use them, but I think there is also going to be this trend, which I know we're going to talk about, in terms of getting back to some of the, what else can I say, cheap, easy, free stuff that a lot of people actually neglect and then end up going into buying these quite expensive devices while not doing some of the things that we know are just proven to help with health.
Yeah, I think it's always good to get the fundamentals in place and try all the free things. And then if you still feel like there's room for improvement, like the Pulsetto is definitely not going to change my life if I'm not doing all these other things. But it's kind of a nice like extra, just to throw in a bit of extra sort of vagus nerve stimulation. So I think it'll be exciting. I know that there are a lot more things on the way in terms of health tech, which will be really interesting to look out for. Obviously, the jury is very much out on a lot of them, HRV devices, red light therapy. There's more studies happening around red light now, which are really promising. Lots of people getting them not just for like anti-aging and skin, they're getting it actually for overall health and getting kind of larger red lights in their homes, which is interesting. Microbiome sensors in toilets, which is an interesting space. Not sure how accurate it is at the moment. I know that some of the products that have just arrived on the market are more looking at like the color of your urine to see, for instance, how hydrated you are, the consistency of your stool. So not necessarily like really impressive data about your microbiome, but interesting to kind of give you insights about, the stool chart and where you need to be, whether you need more fiber or your hydration if you're dehydrated. So I think that would be an interesting space to look out for. It also felt like this year, biohacking centers kind of blew up. So I don't know about you, but I was scrolling on social media and just seeing more and more of these kind of social wellness spaces, but also IV drip spaces, hyperbaric oxygen chambers. And it's interesting because the global biohacking market's now estimated to be worth around $20 to $25 billion. So that's definitely becoming more mainstream. Yeah, things like, I guess, IV drips, NAD became quite popular. I know that, was it some of the Kardashians and Hailey Bieber, like they a couple of years ago were seen trying NAD drips, and then suddenly everyone wanted to try them. But red light therapy seems to be apparently the most trusted biohack at the moment. Around 40 to 50% of biohacking clinics are now offering red light as one of their kind of core services, which is interesting. And also something I find quite interesting is because biohacking, I don't know about you, but it's been marketed almost more of a guy, like tech bro thing, like the Dave Asprey, the Gary Breckers, like it seems like they've been fronting it, but actually the research shows that women now make up over 55 to 60% of biohacking clinic clients. So it seems that women are actually getting more engaged with this than men. What are your thoughts on this?
So I think if there's an advantage to using some of these services, like you said, alongside doing the basics, then that might really, really help people. It might help people going somewhere where there's a social group where they're, maybe aligned and people can talk about their problems and feel like they're as part of a community. I think a lot of the marketing might be more aimed at women for some of this sort of thing. That might be why they're going to those more. But I'm very mindful of things like the term biohacking, because I think, well, if it's something that is evidence-based and will help your health, fine. If it's not, don't go near it. Or if you do, just know that you're going near something that's not necessarily going to help you or not proven to help you. And I think that is the problem with biohacking, is that it's associated with, I suppose, some of these bros with the orange glasses telling you to avoid absolutely everything in the supermarket. So it's making sure that we're putting this really clear division between what actually works and where you might be being scammed.
I agree with that. And I also think the issue around some of these clinics is the price. I don't think it's very accessible. So I wonder if, in 2026 and beyond, actually, there'll be a movement towards like lower cost centers where actually it doesn't cost, like to even do an infrared sauna, which I guess is a good one to try, actually is really expensive in some places. And you think, gosh, I can just go to a normal sauna. Like I've got near me a kind of community sauna, and there's sort of traditional Finnish saunas. And it's like £9 to go for an hour. And like, it's a really nice vibe. People are really social, and it's just like low key and fun. And I think actually sometimes that feels more enjoyable as an experience than going to like, I guess, a clinic where everything's again a bit clinical and spending a lot of money. So it'll be interesting to see. And actually, I think a lot of these biohackers are actually aware that a lot of it is not accessible, and they actually need to kind of find new ways to reach other people. So I saw that Gary Brecker did an article recently, and I mentioned this briefly last week, where he did like an article about the 6 free biohacking things you can do, aka get out in the sun first thing in the morning, first hour within waking up, getting your feet on the ground in the morning and walking on the grass or whatever it be. Like these things, I think they're realizing that actually we need to focus less on like spending loads of money, basically.
Yeah, I think that is really important. And you also talked about how much the wellness industry is worth, and it's worth absolutely billions. And often people say, oh, the pharmaceutical industry, they just want to take your money. But the wellness industry is almost worth more than the pharmaceutical industry now. So you do have to be careful about who's selling what. And it is absolutely fine, of course, to spend money. We're spending money all the time. We're spending money on social events, food, skincare. So we're all still spending money, but you do have to be careful. And so many people are struggling at the moment. The cost of living is only going up. And what we don't want people to do is spend money on, say, miracle cures and not just get out in nature, even just getting out in your local park. Of course, if you can drive to somewhere that's even more secluded and feel even more in nature, fine. But actually making sure you're getting out, making sure you actually walk a bit every day. So people think, how much could a 10-minute walk really make a difference? Do a 10-minute walk a few times a day. That adds up to half an hour. It doesn't have to be all in one go. Take your umbrella, make sure you've got your radiator ready if if things are wet and you need to dry them out. It's that kind of stuff that's really, really important and is free that a lot of people still aren't doing. And yet we know, and I've said this before, and I'll say it probably every time I'm on a podcast, that less than 1 in 10 of us is even getting enough fiber, that we know is so important for long-term health, helping to reduce cravings, supporting performance. And those people could be buying those 40p tins of beans, buying more frozen fruit, which is a lot cheaper as well. And it's, not always cheaper, but it keeps for longer. It's those little habits that some people still aren't doing, but they might be duped into the more expensive things.
I had an interesting conversation a couple of episodes back with Jamie Clements, the breathwork instructor who has lots of views on the wellness industry as a whole. And an interesting point that he made is actually the wellness industry is worth more than ever, but people are also more stressed and unhappy than ever. So you've got to question why that is, and kind of the dark side of the wellness industry, and why, a lot of it is about monetization and profits and stuff. So I guess it's up to us to really judge these things. And yeah, I guess read the research. Like that's something that comes up a lot on this show. It's like, how can we make good choices and not feel overwhelmed by everything that's out there?
Yeah. Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Actually, so just on the dark side of the wellness industry, I think it's this side of it that keeps telling everyone that they're not doing enough and that they're really sick. And yes, there are things that we do need to improve. Like we absolutely know that. But it's the image that we're asked to strive for. I mean, morning routines, that's something that's been insane this year. Or how dare you not get up at 4 o'clock, record 20 podcasts, save the world, put your face in ice water, run alongside a Range Rover or whatever it is that that people are doing. And I know they're for views. That's not actually their morning routine. Or if it is, it's a very, very rare morning routine. So we're often being told, you're not doing enough, you're not healthy enough, you need to have this optimal health. And I think that can be very, very damaging, make people even more stressed, make them even more worried about their health. And of course, we do need to think about our health. We do need to be putting habits in place. But please also go and see a doctor to find out if you're not well or not. Please don't let an influencer say, are you experiencing X symptom? Well, that means you've clearly got this. No one can diagnose you through a video on social media.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And actually, I'd love to talk about some of these sort of softer practices that have kind of got a bit more attention. And I'm so excited about this side of wellness because it feels like these are free things we can do that don't feed into like the crazy profits in the wellness industry where you can kind of, things that we said, like getting outside, forest bathing. It's been coined this year, spending time outside. That's what, as I said earlier, I've been doing that, getting out, but not just being in nature, but trying to be a bit more mindful, not having the phone around, looking around. It's what they do in Japan, isn't it? They kind of take in the smells and the sights and just being a bit more present because, again, one of the topics that we've discussed quite a lot on this show is actually how we evolved and trying to tap back into those things that we would have done for like thousands and thousands of years. So being outside, but we wouldn't have had all those distractions. We would have enjoyed looking at stargazing. We would have enjoyed like looking at, the animals and nature and stuff. And I think we've become so distracted, especially in cities, everything's so busy and chaotic. So yeah, I think that's a really nice focus right now. And things like breath work, I know that a lot of people have been practicing breath work for a long time, but it is having a real moment now. And I think that's a really promising thing because, it's really important for nervous system regulation. Do you have any practices that you do for your nervous system? So do you have days where you wake up and I guess Calm app is really helpful for things like that. But what things do you find particularly helpful?
So exactly some of the things you were saying, actually getting out in the morning. I do try and stick to that. And I've been pretty good. There's some mornings that I don't. I take my cup of tea, my peppermint tea usually in a massive mug, and I just go and walk around the buildings that I'm in, basically, that has a bit of grass, it has trees, it's on the edge of a golf course. I make sure I'm out there for about 10 minutes. I sometimes stand on the grass with or without my shoes on, depending on how confident I feel about the dogs that have been around. So yeah, that's another thing. Please stay safe. If the ground is not clean, don't do that. And there's just an advantage to being outside. Try and do it, like you said, in the first hour of waking. It can be really, really helpful. Please still wear sunglasses, by the way, if you're going out and it's not early in the morning. That's another really important thing. Stay safe, use sun cream, use sunglasses, etc. But I do that early in the morning if I can, even if it's very short. Try and do a short meditation.
This has been one of the huge things of 2025. It's been discussing how we really need connection, and there's science behind it as well. It's science backed. So back at end of October, I released an episode with Dr. David Hamilton, who discusses this power of empathy, kindness, and what it does to your body, visualization, all of these things. Fascinating discussion about how little tiny acts of kindness literally lowers your blood pressure. We evolved in sort of tribes, I guess, helping each other out, doing teamwork and showing acts of kindness, just small gestures for each other. And I think sometimes we can be a bit isolated now. So it's how do you kind of make sure you've got your tight community around you, get out in the community. There's something to be said for having people on your doorstep. I think that can feel really, it sort of makes you feel safer, doesn't it? It all makes sense. It's so obvious, but we've lost sight of that. And I think especially in cities, I've spoken about it a lot on this show about being in London. It's a big city. Lots of people say they feel lonely in London. You can live an hour away from your friends. So how can you tap into these sort of communities around you? And I think it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful that we're like having these realizations and actually trying to sort of make these small things happen in our lives now.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it actually just reminded me of something I have started this year that I can't believe I forgot to mention. I started belly dancing classes. And that was because I've tried different types of dance. I wanted something that resonated. I'd done belly dancing before and really, really enjoyed it, and really wanted also to, and this is something that's really helpful, focus on something that is not to do with my work. It is so tempting when you have your own business or you're very ambitious for everything to be focused towards that. Well, how will it help my business? And because we see so much again on social media about, entrepreneurs, and whether you're in a job or whether you have your own business, everything seems to be obsessed with that. And so it's really important to say, what are the things that I'm doing in my life that are not connected with that. And of course, they can end up having advantages towards it because they relax you or maybe give you connections. But your sole primary purpose of going to do it, what can you do that you just enjoy that is not to do with your job? So I found these belly dancing classes that really weren't very expensive. It was about £55 for a course of 6, which is reasonable. I know that might be out of some people's price range as well, but it was reasonable enough for it to be accessible to a few people to come and do a course. And I think that's, again, really important. There are some classes that are very, very expensive. Some people will never be able to do them. But if you can't go and do that, there's also online ones. But what it gave me was a bit more of a community, meeting new people, meeting people who also live near me that I didn't know lived near me, learning about a craft and a history of something that I didn't know much about, and actually took me out of thinking about things like work, which is so important to be able to relax, because a huge reason people can't relax is they can't switch off that overthinking. They can't switch off the worry around whether it's work, money, or relationships. So if you can go and do something that also involves moving your body, that was another reason that it was great, it can really, really help you switch off.
I love that. I tried tennis lessons this year. So over the summer, in the park near me, they did group tennis lessons, really cheap, in groups. And it was genuinely really fun, but also absolutely hilarious because I was in the beginner's class and I'm not great at tennis at all. Hand-eye coordination's not brilliant. And just, we were all so terrible. Like the balls were flying everywhere, like whacking into people. And it was just a real big social thing. And there were a few sessions where it was glorious sunshine in the summer. It was kind of on a Thursday lunchtime or something. So you get out of the house. And there were a couple of times where there was like jazz playing in the park. And I just thought, wow, this is so beautiful to be like meeting new people, learning a new skill, having fun, music, sunshine, like that is like wealth in my eyes. So trying to find hobbies like this, local community stuff, really important.
Just, you really hit a good point in terms of we weren't very good at it. We're all just learning. We're just beginners. And again, because everything we see on social media is so curated, it's so perfect. And don't get me wrong, I love seeing people with skill. I love seeing dancers with skill, tennis players with skill. It's really incredible. But sometimes it can make people think, well, why aren't I good at that? Or because I'm not good at that, I'm not going to go and do it. And we need to make sure we don't lose that learning mindset, but also being okay with just not looking perfect. You're a beginner and it's fine. And those people who are doing things incredibly on social media, they have trained and trained and trained and trained. That might be the key area that they work in. It's totally fine and fun to go and do something where you go, do you know what? I'm really not good at this, but I'm finding it hilarious. I'm meeting new people. I'm building a new skill, and I'm not doing this for social media views. You know, I think sometimes because social media is so prevalent, people think, well, I shouldn't really be doing anything unless it's going to look good on social media. And that's another reason we can use social media for good, but we need to be really careful that that's not our lens of the world.
Yeah, no, that's all really, really strong points. I think it's so important to think about these things. And also neuroplasticity, like we can learn new skills, but you have to keep using your brain, otherwise you use it or lose it, as they say. And that's another worry with AI that's come up this year around brain rot and how people are using AI so much that actually their brains are kind of slowly deteriorating, which is really scary. So I think, yeah, challenging ourselves, learning new skills. Another thing with this whole slowing down, softer wellness practices thing that I found really interesting this year was talking to Salim Najjar, who is on social media at that HRV guy. He was on the show recently, and he made a good point about how we evolved to actually be quite still in our lives. So of course we'd go out hunting and looking for food, and sometimes we'd be in danger, but actually the vast majority of the time we were resting, we were still, we were mindful, we were with our communities, we were cooking. And I think without having that stillness, it's really hard to like reflect on what you want, you know, your purpose in life, your authentic self, all these things. I think you require a bit of time to sort of reflect. And he said it's a bit like, imagine like lions on safari. They obviously, their nervous system goes sort of into sympathetic, and they're kind of have a more of a stress response when they're hunting or if they're in danger. But 90% of the time they are with their tribes, relaxing, bonding. And that is how we also evolved. So it's, I guess, finding ways to tap into that. And I love that is becoming such an important part of the conversation this year. I'd love to talk to you about the retreat culture that's also been going on. That's blown up this year. Things like nervous system and breathwork retreats, digital detoxes, everyone's about that now. Wellness tourism is now worth apparently $800 billion. Huge. Surveys are showing that more than 70% of retreat attendees are citing stress, burnout, mental overload for their main reasons for attending, not weight loss or fitness. Very interesting. And there's been just generally a huge sharp rise in 3 to 5 day retreats, which seems to be the magic number. Have you been on any retreats this year?
This year, no. I did go on an amazing retreat the year before in Florida. I happened to be in Florida and got invited on an amazing retreat, which was just absolutely wonderful. Incredible social circle, wonderful learnings. It was actually a lot about speaking as well and helping improve your purpose and making that a reality in the world, which was amazing. Lovely food, yoga, dancing. It was not about being healthy and weight loss and things like that, but the food was healthy and there was also cake there, which was very, very important. There was a huge abundance of food. No one was going to lose weight on that retreat anyway, which, can be the case on retreats. It's important that it's about enjoyment.
Yeah.
I think what I find about retreats that's really, really important is depending on especially someone's financial situation, is just think about why you're going on that retreat. And is this going to help you long term? Do you just want to enjoy yourself and go and connect with like-minded people? That's a perfectly good reason to go on a retreat. But again, have a think about how it's being advertised. Is it telling you you are going to permanently de-stress and permanently have the health that you want? Just be careful of some of the advertising around them. If it says to you, of course, this is going to help, this is going to be a way that you can come away from your phone, meet like-minded people, relax, that's reason enough to go on a retreat and go and enjoy yourself. But they can be very, very expensive. So it's just making sure that that is going to work for you, that is the right decision for you. And just harping back to what we were talking about, am I implementing these things in my daily life? And is going on that retreat going to help me do that? Because it might feel like a real come down when you come back if you just slot back into every habit you already had that wasn't really helping you. You might feel like it was wasted money and time on that retreat.
Yeah, agreed. I think a lot of it's about integration with these things. So it's the same with therapy. It's the same with the episode with Jamie. We were discussing how with breath work, you can reach these sort of almost psychedelic states. Really good for therapy, alongside therapy for working on traumas and stuff. But a big point that he made, and I completely agree, is that actually you have to then try and reflect on those things and integrate the findings and your realizations back into your life. So I guess it's like, how do you enjoy yourself, live in the moment, soak it all up, but then actually try and use that feeling and maybe, if it is a wellness one it might be nutrition, like how can you take on some of those recipes and implement them into your daily routine? I didn't do any wellness. I feel like I really missed out this year, but that I think might be a priority for 2026 is to do a couple of wellness retreats and give them a go and go with a friend or maybe even go on your own. I think part of the fun can be just meeting new people and socializing.
Oh, one thing I've thought it might be worth mentioning is that sometimes you get day retreats as well. So really depends on any yoga centers and things like that do them where they might have a weekend retreat where it's not overnight, but that's more affordable for people. You'll go and meet lovely people, have great food, maybe learn some new skills, and then you go back to your own home on the Saturday night or the Friday night or whatever it is, and it might just be more reasonable financially. So it's just important that people can find these things. Maybe they go on bigger retreats as well, but finding something that works for you, your budget is maybe local to you as well. Maybe you can't get the childcare that you need and you have to do something local. So there are always options, and make sure that it's a reputable company and that it's actually going to give you what you want.
One of the big things that's been in the news this year, and I've mentioned AI a few times so far, but it was the big shift in it being used for mental health. Experts are now calling for better regulation. We've had OpenAI announcing changes to their regulation because there was a tragic case of suicide. And I think it's a big concern for a lot of people as to where the AI is going. Another thing that's popped up this year and suddenly feels like everyone's been doing is the body scanners. So lots of companies now offering them. I did actually try the Necker Health one, which is this sort of more, I guess, affordable option that's out there. Some of them are very, very expensive, but lots of people are looking at this. It feels like, could this be the future of health? The Necker Health one was truly fascinating. So have you tried that one or one of them? So you go into first a scanner that takes, like thousands of photographs of your body and looks for any sort of skin blemishes and moles and actually maps them so you can keep an eye on them, which is really, really interesting. And it kind of flags any that look like a strange shape or color. And then they take like a blood test and it's so futuristic. You feel like you're in a spaceship. and they put the blood test sample literally in the wall and it shoots off. And within sort of 20 minutes, the results are back, and they look at various things, like a lot of the obvious stuff you would do with the doctor, basically, with the GP.
So does it check for things like iron deficiency?
Yeah, vitamins, minerals. It does cholesterol, blood sugars, various things. So inflammation. It was a really fascinating thing to do. They also do like an ECG, and they check your, I guess, circulation. And then a doctor comes in and actually does a physical examination of your skin, grip strength. They check your eye pressure. It's like a full body MOT. And you then at the end, you go into like a futuristic room with a big screen. And the doctor who has done the sort of, I guess, examination with you will go through all of your stats. They say your like heart age, which is quite interesting. So my heart health age was like 8 years younger, which I was very impressed by. BMI, you know, and it's a really interesting snapshot. And I think that it's the guy who started Spotify. It's his company, and he's trying to roll these out. So I think there are more coming in the UK. And he's trying to make this kind of private healthcare, I guess, more accessible, where it's a lot about prevention and flagging things early. So, you know, if you show signs of, you know, pre-diabetes, it's kind of how do we get on top of that? I mean, they do then recommend that you come back the next year, and they give you a discount for they're very smart. So at the end they say, did you enjoy it? Like, do you want to come back for the same next year? We recommend coming, you know, every year, and they give you £50 off or something. But I do think it's a helpful tool. And I do think, especially in a country like the UK with the NHS being really, I guess, in a difficult position right now, and it can be hard to get appointments, to have the option to go somewhere like this, I think it's quite interesting. There are other body scanning companies that are more of a premium service. They do full body MRIs and things like that to look for cancers. But I think that's sort of, you know, for a different market perhaps. But what do you think about this? Do you think it's something that a lot of us will be doing in the future? Maybe it'll become quite normal to once a year go and do sort of a full body MIT like this.
Possibly. And I think price point is really important, and it's good if it's being made more accessible. But again, it's asking, what tests does someone really, really need? And people can get things done on the NHS, and we want people to know that and make sure that they know they can get blood sugar levels, cholesterol, etc. checked there, and that they need to still do that. And it's also the interpretation of the results. So it sounds great that you have a doctor who's interpreting those results. And it's asking the question, what are we doing with those results? What are the actions that I'm going to take? Is that person qualified to give you advice on what actions you need to take, what you need to look out for? Those are all my biggest concerns. And obviously the price point as well. And making sure people know what is available, what isn't available on the NHS, and what they might decide to pay for privately.
I think it was a good experience. They're all fully qualified doctors. A lot of them worked in the NHS, and they're like looking for, you know, different opportunities, I guess. But what they did do is that they kind of go through every single point that you've tested for, and they make recommendations. So I think that's cool. It's kind of like, you know, what do you need to improve on? For me, the main thing was my grip strength. Really poor, actually. So since then, I've been, you know, and I know it's very important for things like perimenopause in the future, osteoporosis. So it's something that I've been now really trying to focus on in the gym. Like, stop doing cardio days and do more strength trainings. I think it's helpful to have someone to be like, right, this is something you need to sort out. So I definitely enjoyed that experience, and we'll see where that space goes in 2026.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. If results are going to give you some really great tangible actions where you say, actually, I didn't know I needed to improve on that, or that test result is going a little bit towards the high range before it gets to the range that's not helpful, is to say, right, what changes can I make? It could be really small tweaks. It could be, like you said, I'm going to do something different in the gym, or at the moment I'm doing all cardio. I'm going to do half cardio, half body weight training, resistance training, or something like that. And I think that is really, really helpful to have that information and have someone really qualified interpreting that for you and saying, these are some really quick changes that you could start making right now. Let's look at how we're going to do them.
Yeah, completely agree. Vanessa, before we wrap up, I'd love to know your predictions for 2026. What trends do you think might take off? What do you think we're going to leave behind from 2025?
So it might take a while, but I think we will eventually leave behind some of the skinny talk. I think there's already been enough outrage about that, and people saying, look, let's just focus on health, focus on food that we love. Mental health is so important, and skinny talk is not helping that. So I think we will leave that behind eventually. I think we will move more towards plant-rich way of eating. I think at the moment there is far too much division, too much vegan bashing as well, or bashing things like plant-based eating. And that's where sort of some of the carnivore stuff has come in that's been really, really damaging. But I think a more balanced approach that people are understanding is, we do need to reduce our animal products for the planet and for our health, but I don't need to fully give anything up. I don't need to become vegan or vegetarian, but I really do need to build in more of a variety of plant foods, put more plant foods on the plate. That's why things like the Bang in the Beans campaign, I think the campaign won't necessarily be forever, but its message is evergreen. And I think that sort of stuff is going to be understood a lot more, and people are going to see, well, also there's a cost of living crisis, that some of these foods that are the best for us are also some of the cheapest. And they're going to think, actually, it doesn't all have to be glamorous to have good health. I can build things in that aren't going to cost me much. That short walk and things like that, going to the park, I think all of those are going to be a lot more prominent, because I think people are going to get sick of being told they have to do some 3-hour morning routine.
Oh yeah, we don't need those 3 hours. And like the 5 to 9 before your 9 to 5, as if, I'm in bed. The reality is I'm in bed till about 8 a.m. most days these days. As someone who used to have to get up at 4 a.m. every day, I'm very much enjoying that. I just think you've got to just do what works for you. And I hope that will be the message that goes forward for 2026, is like, slow down, connect with other people, and, I guess less black and white thinking about stuff, more of a balanced approach when it comes to nutrition, and just, I guess seeing what works for us, seeing what works for your body. Vanessa, it's been so fun for our last episode of the year. Obviously, you were on the show earlier in the year as well. People can go back and listen to that fabulous episode all about what you do, the work you do with your clients. For people who might be interested in finding you online, seeing your work, inquiring, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram under Vanessa for Health, or if you put Vanessa Sturman into any social platform, you can find me on there. And my website is vanessasturman.com, and you can get in touch with me on any of those to discuss coaching, workshops for any corporates as well. So speaking is a big part of what I do, and just have a conversation with me.
Amazing. Vanessa, thank you so much for coming on the Health Review. Excited for 2026. We'll have to get you back on the show again.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me today.